The books don't tell you about the temperature. That is the first lie they let you believe. You read the liturgies of banishment in the warmth of the skolam, and you imagine the fires of the warp, the burning heat of holy Prometheum. But the reality of my life, the reality of the Inquisition's administrative wing, was the cold. It was a pervasive, damp chill that settled into the marrow of your bones and stayed there. My office was a testament to this gray existence. It smelled of dust, of centuries-old vellum that had begun to rot from the inside out, and of the stale, recycled air of the station. For 5 years I sat there. I cataloged the impossible. I turned reports of madness and heresy into neat, orderly columns of data. It was safe. It was boring. It was a shield I built around myself, one sheet of paper at a time. Then the Vox unit on my desk clicked. It wasn't the usual rhythmic chime of a shift change or a data request. It was a harsh, static-filled crackle that sounded like bone snapping under heavy boots. The green rune on the console flared into an angry red. It was a direct line priority override. I remember staring at it, my hand hovering over the receiver, trembling just slightly. You would have trembled too. You know what that light means. It means the bureaucracy is done. It means the shield is gone. When I answered, the voice wasn't human. It was distorted by encryption and distance, but I knew the cadence. It was Inquisitor Thrax. He didn't ask. He didn't greet. He simply gave coordinates. Acolyte Castus, report. Vault G Prime, immediately. The order was followed by a specific instruction that made my stomach turn to ice. Bring the Liber Exorcismus, nothing else. The connection cut before I could breathe a word of acknowledgement. I sat there for a moment in the sudden silence. The Liber Exorcismus. We memorize it, but we pray never to use it. It's a heavy tome, bound in leather that feels too much like skin. As I reached for it on the shelf, I noticed a new smell in the room. It cut through the dust and the rot. It was sharp, cloying, and incredibly sweet. Consecration oil. The summons slip that had printed out was soaked in it. The seal was still hot to the touch, burning my fingertips. That heat was the only real thing in a world of cold data. I walked the corridors towards the lower decks. The walk felt like a descent into a different world. The air grew heavier, pressurized. The usual sounds of the station, the distant hum of generators, the chatter of scribes faded away. They were replaced by a rhythmic thrumming, like a giant mechanical heart, beating in distress. I passed security checkpoints, where the servitors didn't even scan my biosignature. They just saw the seal in my hand and stepped aside, their mechanical eyes tracking me with a dull, lifeless indifference. I was walking into the belly of the beast, and the beast was waiting. When I reached the heavy blast doors of Vault G Prime, the smell of the oil was overpowered by something else. It hit the back of my throat, a sharp metallic tang that tasted like licking a battery. Ozone, burnt air, the residue of energy that shouldn't exist in our material plane. I stood before that door, clutching the book to my chest like a child holding a doll. I told myself I was ready. I told myself my knowledge was a weapon. But as the gears of the door began to grind open, I realized I was just a clerk with a heavy book about to walk into a room where physics was merely a suggestion. The door opened, and the first thing I noticed was the light. It wasn't the warm glow of lumens or the harsh white of an operating theater. It was a sickly, low-wattage yellow that seemed to struggle against the shadows in the corners. The room was small, circular, and constructed of reinforced ferrocrete. The walls were lined with lead and inscribed with hexagrammatic wards that hurt the eyes if you looked at them too long. But the room didn't matter. The equipment didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was the thing in the center. We call them the host. It's a clinical term. It helps us forget that they were once people. This one had been a high-level astropath, a woman who had spent her life listening to the whispers of the galaxy. Now she was strapped to a chirurgical table that looked more like a torture device than medical equipment. There were no leather straps here. She was bound with chains of cold iron, each link etched with microscopic prayers. Her skin was pale translucent, revealing a roadmap of blue veins that seemed to pulse with a rhythm that didn't match her heart. Inquisitor Thrax was there, his back to me. He was methodical, precise. He was applying oils to the seals on the floor, his movements fluid and practiced. The smell was overwhelming now, a mixture of that sacred perfume and the sour, primal stench of human fear sweat. It came from the 2 stormtroopers standing guard by the wall. They were statues in carapace armor, but I could smell their terror. Thrax turned to me. His face was a landscape of scars, but his eyes were clear, terrifyingly calm. "Acolyte," he said. His voice didn't echo. The room swallowed sound. "You've read the theory. Now, witness the practice." I looked back at the host. I tried to find the human being inside that shell. I looked at her face. I shouldn't have done that. Her eyes were open, but they weren't eyes anymore. Where the iris and pupil should have been, there was only static. Gray shifting noise like a Vox screen lost between channels. It wasn't a reflection of the room. It was a window into something else. A deep, nausea-inducing vertigo hit me. I tasted copper in my mouth, thick and undeniable. It was the taste of the warp leaking through. "Increase the sedative," Thrax ordered, not looking at the medical servitor hovering nearby. The machine chirped a negative. The dosage was already lethal for a normal human. The woman on the table twitched. It wasn't a spasm of pain. It was a testing of the chains. A slow, deliberate flex of muscle that shouldn't have been possible for someone in her condition. The sound of the iron links sliding against each other was the loudest thing in the world. It scraped against my nerves. Thrax nodded to me, gesturing to a lectern set just outside the circle of wards. "Set up your station, Castus. Record everything. If we fail, the next team needs to know why." Thrax moved to the control panel on the far wall. He didn't hesitate. His fingers danced over the runes, and I heard the heavy hydraulic locking mechanisms of the door engage behind me. 1 lock, 2, 3. Then came the final seal, a hiss of pressurized air, as the room was hermetically isolated from the rest of the station. We were no longer on a ship. We were no longer in the Imperium. We were in a bubble, a diving bell, lowered into a chaotic ocean. Thrax activated the warding pillars. They rose from the floor, 4 monolithic slabs of black stone, humming with a frequency that made my teeth ache. The activation of the pillars brought a sudden absolute silence. It was an artificial quiet, heavy and suffocating. The hum of the station's ventilation was gone. The distant vibrations of the engines were gone. There was only the sound of my own breathing, loud and ragged in my ears, and the wet, shallow rasp of the host on the table. The air pressure dropped. My ears popped, and the metallic taste in my mouth intensified, coating my tongue like a layer of coins. It felt as though gravity had shifted, pulling us not down, but inward. "Begin the rite of sanctification," Thrax commanded. His voice was low, but in that unnatural silence, it sounded like a thunderclap. I opened the Liber Exorcismus. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost tore the page. I began to read. "Imperator, defend nos, ab hostis." My voice was thin, a pathetic reed against the weight of the atmosphere. Thrax glared at me. Louder, Acolyte. "Faith is your armor. Do not whisper to the dark." I swallowed the bile rising in my throat and forced my voice to steady. I focused on the words, the familiar high Gothic I had studied for years. They were supposed to be powerful. They felt like dust in my mouth. The guards were motionless, their hellguns held across their chests. But I saw the tremor in the grip of the one closest to me. A bead of sweat rolled down his neck, disappearing into his collar. The tension in the room was a physical weight pressing down on our shoulders. We were waiting. That is the worst part of the ritual. The waiting. The books say the demon will rage, will scream. But the host just lay there, silent, still. The static in her eyes swirled faster, a chaotic storm contained within 2 small orbs. And then it happened. The silence didn't break. It was violated. Between one syllable of my prayer and the next, the host moved. She didn't struggle against the chains. She simply lifted her head, the motion smooth and unnatural, like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. She didn't look at Thrax. She didn't look at the guards. She turned her head, the vertebrae cracking audibly, and looked directly at me. The static in her eyes seemed to expand, filling my vision. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking into me. And in that silence, I knew that my book, my desk, and my shield of paper meant absolutely nothing. When she spoke, it wasn't a human voice. It wasn't even a single voice. It was a chorus. It sounded like a crowd of people screaming in a tunnel, overlaid with the wet sound of tearing meat. The sound bypassed my ears and vibrated directly in my skull. "Castus," the thing on the table said. And then the chorus shifted, peeling away the layers of noise until one voice remained. It was soft, kind, and terrified. It was the voice of my mother. "Castus, my boy, why is it so cold here? Why have you brought me to the dark?" I stopped reading. The words died in my throat. I stared at the thing that wore the astropath skin. How could it know I hadn't spoken to my mother in 20 years? She died on a hive world light years away. "Do not listen," Thrax roared, stepping forward, his force staff crackling with energy. "Identify yourself. By the Golden Throne, I compel you." He slammed the butt of the staff onto the deck plates. The sound rang out like a bell, shattering the illusion of my mother's voice. For a second, but only a second, the host giggled. It was a wet, gurgling sound. The voice changed again. This time, it was mine. It was my own voice, but twisted, filled with a malice I didn't know I possessed. "I know what you are, acolyte," the thing said, using my lips, my cadence. "I know about the report you falsified 3 years ago to save your own skin. I know you doubt. I know you are waiting for the Inquisitor to die so you can run." Every word was true. Every secret I had buried under mountains of paperwork was being laid bare in that cold iron room. Thrax did not flinch. He was made of steel and hate. He began the litanies of Inquisition, his voice rising in a crescendo that battled the static coming from the host. "I abjure thee, I cast thee out." The air between them began to shimmer. I looked down at my book, trying to find my place, trying to drown out the sound of my own sins being read back to me. The letters on the page began to move. The ink liquefied, running down the parchment like black tears. I blinked, trying to clear my vision, but the words reformed into insults, into names of things that should not be named. "Focus!" Castus Thrax shouted, not looking back. "Read the binding." Now I forced my eyes shut. I recited from memory. I screamed the words, trying to use the volume to push back the fear. "Sanctus Dominus Imperator." The host threw her head back and laughed, a sound that tore at the fabric of reality. The static in the room spiked, the lights flickering and dying, leaving us in the red glow of emergency lumens. The psychological war was over. The physical one was about to begin. The temperature plummeted. It wasn't a gradual cooling. It was instant. Frost bloomed across the metal floor plates in intricate fractal patterns that looked like jagged teeth. My breath plumed in front of me, a white fog in the red emergency light. But the cold wasn't natural. It burned exposed skin like acid. The smell of ozone intensified until it was choking, mixing with the sudden rotten stench of decay. The walls of the vault reinforced ferrocrete, and holy lead began to weep. A thick black ichor oozed from the microscopic pores of the material, dripping onto the floor with a sound like heavy rain. I looked at the host. The human shape was failing. The biology couldn't hold the pressure of what was inside. Her skin didn't just tear, it unraveled. Ribs cracked outward with the sound of snapping dry wood, but there was no blood, only a pulsating violet light that shone from within the chest cavity. The chains holding her glowed cherry red, hissing as they burned into the freezing flesh. Yet the thing on the table didn't scream in pain. It screamed in triumph. The sound was a high-pitched shriek that shattered the glass of the medical monitors. "Hold the line!" Thrax bellowed. He was standing in the center of the corruption, his coat flapping in a wind that had no source. One of the stormtroopers, a veteran of a dozen campaigns, took a step back. I saw him struggle with his weapon. "Sir, the mechanism!" "It's frozen," he yelled, panic cracking his disciplined facade. The Hellgun was coated in a layer of unnatural ice. He pulled the trigger, but instead of a last bolt, the weapon sparked and sizzled the power cell, dying instantly. The verse of sealing Acolyte. The verse of sealing Thrax, commanded. I tried to speak, but my jaw was locked tight from the cold. The air was too thick to breathe. It felt like inhaling syrup. The black liquid dripping from the walls was pooling on the floor, moving against the tilt of the deck, flowing towards the center, towards the host. It was feeding it. The thing sat up, the red-hot chains stretching to their limit. Its jaw unhinged, hanging loose against its chest. And from that cavernous maw came a voice that shook the foundations of the room. "This tomb will be yours." I fell to my knees. It wasn't an act of supplication. My legs simply gave out. The pressure was crushing. I saw the guard who had spoken drop his useless gun. He was clawing at his helmet, screaming about insects, about things crawling under his skin. The other guard turned, raising his weapon, not at the monster, but at his partner. Chaos had arrived. The laws of physics, of loyalty, of sanity, they were all suspended. We were no longer in the Imperium of man. We were in hell. The boom of a bolter in a confined space is not a sound. It is a physical blow. The shockwave hit me in the chest, knocking the wind out of me. I watched time slowing down as the second guard fired. The round took the first guard in the throat. There was no blood spray, just a mist of red that froze instantly in the air. The screaming stopped. The body hit the floor with a heavy metallic thud. It was a mercy killing, or perhaps it was madness. I couldn't tell. The shooter stood there, weapon smoking his body rigid. Then he turned the gun toward Thrax. Traitor Thrax's voice was like a whip crack. He didn't hesitate. He didn't try to reason. The Inquisitor moved with a speed that belied his age. He raised his bolt pistol and fired a single clean shot. The guard's head snapped back and he crumpled. 2 loyal servants of the throne dead in seconds. Thrax didn't look at the bodies. "Weakness," he hissed. "The weak fall first. Purity is a mercy." I watched him kill them. I watched him kill the men who were supposed to protect us. My mind couldn't process it. And then the connection snapped. The host, the thing, looked at me. The static in its eyes flooded my mind. The room disappeared. The cold disappeared. I was falling. I was floating in a void of infinite colors. Colors that hurt to look at. I saw myself, tiny and insignificant, surrounded by laughing mouths. "You are alone," they whispered. "The Emperor cannot hear you here. There is only the deep. There is only us." I felt a profound sense of peace. Why fight? Why suffer in the cold office? Why tremble in the dark? I could just let go. I could just sleep. The darkness was warm. It was inviting. It promised an end to the fear. Smack. Pain exploded across my face. The world snapped back into focus, gray cold and smelling of ozone. Thrax was standing over me, his hand raised. He had struck me. "Wake up, acolyte!" he roared, grabbing me by the collar of my robes and hauling me to my feet. "Seal your mind. Do not listen to the lies." "Read," I gasped, sucking in the freezing air. My cheek burned, grounding me. I looked past Thrax. The host was no longer on the table. The chains lay in a pile of molten slag. The thing was standing. It was free. The entity that stood before us was no longer the astropath. The flesh had been discarded, a tattered robe hanging off a form made of roiling shadow and searing light. It towered over Thrax, radiating a heat that blistered the paint on the walls. This was a mindless beast. This was a prince of the warp. Thrax ignited his force sword, the blade humming with psychic energy, casting long, dancing shadows against the walls. "I have known you were watching, deceiver in the shadows," Thrax growled, taking a combat stance. The demon laughed a sound like grinding stones. "You think you hunted me, little inquisitor? I hunted you. That meat sack was too weak. I needed a vessel of will. I needed you." It lunged. The clash of the force sword against the demon's claws created a shockwave that shattered the remaining lights. We were fighting in the strobe light flashes of psychic discharge. Thrax parried a blow that would have sliced a tank in half. He was bleeding from his nose and ears, the pressure of the demon's presence crushing his internal organs. He turned his head toward me, his eyes burning with a fanaticism that was more terrifying than the monster. Record it, Castus, the name. Listen for the name. I realized then the true nature of the mission. I wasn't a partner. I wasn't an acolyte. I was a scribe. Thrax intended to force the demon to reveal its true name in the heat of battle, and I was the recording device. If he died, the name would be the weapon the next team used. The demon roared, frustrated by Thrax's resistance. In its anger, the air vibrated with a sound that wasn't a sound. It was a concept, a sequence of syllables that defied the human tongue. Kor, V, Zul, Ur. The name tore through my mind like a jagged hook. I screamed, clamping my hands over my ears, but the name was inside. "Write it," Thrax bellowed, parrying another blow. I grabbed the data slate. My fingers were numb, bleeding from where I had bitten my nails down in panic. I carved the phonetic approximation into the screen. Khor. Each letter made me nauseous. Each syllable felt like a sin. I finished the sequence. The demon stopped. It turned its head slowly toward me. It smiled. The data slate felt heavy like a block of lead. The demon ignored Thrax. It had found the weak link. It had found the witness. "The name dies with you, little worm," it hissed. It moved toward me, not walking but flowing across the room. I backed up until I hit the cold metal of the wall. I raised the data slate as if it could stop a creature of the Imperium. I closed my eyes. For the Emperor. The shout was weak, gurgling, but defiant. The second guard, the one Thrax had shot, wasn't dead. He was dragging himself across the floor, leaving a trail of bright arterial blood. He didn't have a gun. He held a combat knife. He threw himself at the demon's legs. It was a pathetic, hopeless gesture, a man against a god. The demon didn't even look down. It simply paused, annoyed by the interruption. The shadow engulfed the soldier. There was no scream of pain, only a terrible, wet, slurping sound. The soldier didn't just die. He was unmade. His armor fell empty to the floor with a clatter. His body, his blood, his soul absorbed in an instant to fuel the monster's form. But that single second of distraction was enough. Castus Thrax's voice was a ruin, wheezing and broken. He was leaning against the control pillars, one hand clutching a wound in his side that smoked with black energy. The protocol reversed the pillars. I looked at the demon, now larger, swollen with the soul of the guard. I looked at Thrax. I understood. We couldn't kill it. We couldn't banish it. We had lost. The only option left was the one they didn't teach in the books. The demon turned back to me, sensing the shift in the room. It lunged, claws outstretched. I didn't run. I dove for the control console. I scrambled over the debris, glass shards cutting into my palms. The air smelled of ozone and copper so strongly I gagged. I reached the console just as the demon's shadow fell over me. The pillars Thrax had whispered. Reverse them. I knew what the buttons did. I knew the theory. The pillars were generating a Geller field, pushing the warp out. Reversing them would create a vacuum. It wouldn't push, it would pull. It would turn this room into a stasis crypt, a moment of time frozen forever. Your soul will sing for me, the demon roared its voice, shaking the rivets in the floor. I looked at Thrax. He wasn't trying to escape. He was standing directly in the center of the circle, arms spread wide, baiting the creature. He smiled at me. It wasn't a kind smile. It was a grimace of victory. He knew he was already dead. He was choosing how he died. He was choosing to be the jailer locked in the cell with the prisoner for eternity. My hand hovered over the rune. It was a simple red switch, a mechanism of metal and wire. It seemed too small to end a life. It seemed too small to damn a soul. But that is the nature of our work. We trade souls for seconds. I felt a strange calm wash over me. The fear evaporated, replaced by a cold, mechanical certainty. I wasn't cast as the acolyte anymore. I was the off switch. No, the demon realized the trap a fraction of a second too late. You fool, you will kill us all. I looked the creature in the eye. That's the point, I whispered. I pressed the rune. There was no explosion. There was no flash of light. It was the opposite. It was a sound, like the universe taking a deep breath and holding it. Click. And then a deafening whoosh, like an airlock cycling but infinite. The sound was sucked out of the room. The color was drained away, leaving everything in shades of gray monochrome. I watched as the demon froze mid-lunge. Its claws inches from my face stopped. The fire of its essence solidified into jagged crystal. I looked at Thrax. He was frozen in his defiant stance, his coat caught in an invisible wind. The black liquid on the walls stopped dripping, hanging in midair like obsidian stalactites. The cold became absolute. Absolute zero. A stasis field of impossible strength had snapped into place, trapping the Inquisitor and the demon in a single eternal moment of conflict. I was outside the circle. I was breathing. I was alive. The silence that followed was heavy, heavier than the earth, heavier than sin. I stared at the statues. They were grotesque art, a monument to a war that would never end, fought in a room that no longer existed on any map. The blast doors behind me groaned. They began to open. The team outside had been monitoring the energy levels. They knew it was over. They scrubbed me down with wire brushes and chemical sprays that burned the skin off my back. They didn't use the sweet oil this time. They used harsh decontamination foam that smelled of ammonia and bleach. I stood there naked and shivering as the servitors scanned me for corruption. I handed them the data slate with the true name. The adept who took it didn't look at me. He clamped it into a containment box with magnetic locks. "Status of Inquisitor Thrax," a voice asked from behind a glass partition. "Sealed," I croaked. My voice sounded like it belonged to a stranger. It was rough, damaged by the screaming. Omega Protocol active. Entity contained. Casualties: 2 stormtroopers, 1 host, 1 Inquisitor. Noted, the voice said, "Bored, efficient." The report is logged. Acolyte Castus, you are cleared for duty. Pending psych evaluation, you will be recommended for promotion. The Ordo values your efficiency. I laughed. It was a dry, hacking sound that hurt my chest. Efficiency. I had just watched 4 people die. I had just condemned my master to an eternity of frozen combat. And they called it efficiency. I walked back to my quarters. The halls were the same. The lights were the same. But the people looked like ghosts to me. They were walking meat waiting to be harvested. They didn't know. They didn't know how thin the walls were. It has been 3 weeks. I sit at my desk. The new seal they gave me sits on the corner of the blotter. It is heavy gold plated. A reward. I process the data. I organize the columns. I make the lists. The heating in the office has been fixed, they tell me. But I am still cold. I wear my greatcoat indoors. I wrote the report. 500 pages of tactical analysis, warp signatures and timestamps. I described the smell. I described the sounds. But words are just ink on paper. They cannot capture the feeling of your soul vibrating in time with a demon's laughter. No one will read it. It will be filed in a vault, just like Thrax. Sometimes when the station is quiet during the night cycle, I stop typing. I listen. I strain my ears against the hum of the ventilation. I imagine I can hear a faint rhythmic scratching, like a claw on metal, like a fingernail on glass. And then it hits me. The taste. It comes unbidden. A sharp, coppery tang on the back of my tongue. The taste of a battery. The taste of the warp. It lasts for a second, then fades. But in that second, I know. I know the seal isn't perfect. I know Thrax is still fighting. And I know that somewhere in the dark, something remembers my name. I pick up my pen. I keep working. There is nothing else to do. The war continues. It always does. And I am just waiting for the phone to ring again. The quill scratches against the parchment. It is a sound I used to find comforting, a rhythmic affirmation of order. Scratch, dip, scratch. Now it sounds like claws skittering inside the walls. 3 weeks have passed since G' was sealed. 3 weeks of mandatory rest, which consisted of sitting in a white room while skin servitors took blood samples and measured my brainwaves. They told me I was clean. They told me the taint of the warp had not touched my soul. They gave me a certificate stamped with the rosette. It is lying on my desk right now, the red wax seal gleaming under the lumen strip. I pick it up. The wax feels greasy like congealed fat. I put it down. My job has not changed. I am still a scrivener for the Ordo Malleus. I still process the intake forms for the black ships. I still categorize the requisition orders for promethium and bolt shells. But the numbers don't look the same anymore. Before they were just arithmetic, logistics. Now I see the equations of death. 5,000 rounds of ammunition. That's not a stockpile. That's 5 minutes of desperate fire in a corridor that smells of sulfur. 10 crates of corpse starch. That's not rations. That's the recycled meat of men who died screaming. I try to focus on the ledger in front of me. It is a request for structural repairs on Deck 7. A steam pipe burst. Routine maintenance. I dip my quill into the inkwell. The ink is black standard issue administrative blend. But as I pull the nib out, the liquid seems too thick. It drips slowly like syrup. I touch the tip to the paper. The ink spreads, soaking into the fibers of the vellum. It doesn't stay in the lines. It bleeds outward, forming shapes that look like capillaries, like a bruise spreading under pale skin. I blink, and the ink is normal again. Just black marks on a page. I rub my eyes. My hands are trembling. The medicos called it post-traumatic stress response. They gave me pills, small white tablets that taste like chalk. I take one. I swallow it dry. It sits in my stomach like a stone. The tremor in my hand doesn't stop. It's not fear. It's a vibration. My body is humming at a frequency that doesn't match the world around me anymore. I am out of tune with reality. Acolyte Castus. The voice makes me jump. I knock the inkwell over. Black liquid spills across the ledger, ruining a morning's work. I look up. Standing in the doorway of my office is a figure I don't recognize. He's tall, wearing the gray robes of the Internal Logistical Division, but his boots are too clean. His eyes are too sharp. He isn't looking at the spilled ink. He is looking at my hands. I apologize. I stammer, grabbing a rag to sop up the mess. The ink feels warm on my fingers. I am clumsy today. The medication. Leave it, the man says. He steps into the room. He closes the door behind him. The click of the latch is loud, final. I am Interrogator Vance. Inquisitor Thrax mentioned you in his final logs. Thrax. Hearing the name sends a spike of phantom pain through my side, right where the cold of the vault had bitten deepest. The Inquisitor is sealed. I say, my voice automatic. Protocol Omega. Indeed, Vance says. He walks to my desk and picks up the certificate of purity. He looks at it with a faint sneer. And you are the sole witness. The man who wrote the name. He drops the wax seal back onto the desk. It makes a sound like a cracking bone. Tell me, Castus, when you wrote it, did you say it out loud? The question hangs in the air. The smell of ozone returns, faint but undeniable. I can taste the copper on my tongue. No, I lie. I just wrote it. Vance smiles. It is a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Good. Because if you had spoken it, we would have to cut out your tongue. Just to be safe. He leans in close. I can smell the recaf on his breath, and something else beneath it. Gun oil. You are back on duty, Acolyte. But don't think you are forgotten. The Ordo watches its own, especially the survivors. He turns and leaves. I am left alone with the spilled ink. I look at the black puddle on my desk. In the reflection of the liquid for just a fraction of a second, I don't see my own face. I see Thrax's face, frozen in a scream of eternal silence. I grab the rag and scrub the desk. I scrub until the wood is raw. I scrub until my fingers bleed. But the stain remains. It always remains. The nights are the hardest. The station powers down to its nocturnal cycle, the main lumens dimming to a dull, rusty orange. The sounds of the bureaucracy fade, the stamping of seals, the shuffling of paper, the endless drone of the prayers broadcast over the loudspeakers. What replaces them is the sound of the ship itself, the settling of metal, the groan of thermal expansion, and the Vox. My quarters are small, a standard hab unit, with a bunk, a wash basin, and a Vox caster on the wall that cannot be turned off, only turned down. It is meant to broadcast the imperial truth, the sermons of the ecclesiarchy, to keep our spirits fortified while we sleep. Usually, it is a low mumble of Latin, a comforting background noise. But tonight, the signal is drifting. I lie in my bunk, staring at the rivets in the ceiling. Click. Shh. The Vox spits static. I roll over, pulling the scratchy wool blanket over my head. I try to think of the data columns. I try to count promethium barrels. 100. 200. Castus. I freeze. My heart hammers against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I hold my breath. It was just the static. It was just a random fluctuation in the carrier wave. The mind seeks patterns where there are none. That is what the books say. Picreodolia. Cult. This time it is clearer. It is a whisper buried deep under the layer of white noise. It sounds like a man trying to speak through a mouthful of crushed ice. I sit up. The air in my hab unit feels thin, chilly. I look at the temperature gauge on the wall. It reads normal, but I can see my breath misting in the orange light. I walk to the Vox caster. My bare feet stick to the cold metal floor. I reach out to the dial. I should turn it down. I should report a malfunction to the tech priests. That is the procedure. Faulty equipment leads to faulty thoughts. But my hand doesn't turn the volume down. It turns it up. The static roars, filling the small room. It sounds like a waterfall of sand. And in the center of it, the voice becomes a thread I can follow. The seal cracks. Castus. The name. Burns. It is Thrax. It is impossible, but it is him. He is sealed in a stasis field in a vault that no longer exists on the deck plans. He is frozen in time. He cannot speak. Unless the stasis isn't perfect. Unless the demon is eating him slowly over 1,000 years that feel like seconds to us, but eternity to him. Inquisitor, I whisper. I feel foolish. I'm talking to a box on the wall. They are coming for the book. Castus. Run. The signal cuts out with a violent pop, followed by the smooth, melodious voice of the automated sermon. The Emperor protects the vigilant. Blessed is the mind, too small for doubt. I stumble back from the wall. They are coming for the book. What book? The Liber Exorcismus. I returned it. It's in the library. I followed protocol. Then I remember. The notebook. My personal notebook. The one I kept in my pocket during the ritual. The one I didn't hand over to the decontamination team because I forgot it was there. It's in my footlocker. Right now. I drop to my knees and drag the heavy metal trunk out from under my bunk. My hands are shaking so hard I can barely work the combination lock. Click, click, clack. The lid swings open. They're buried under a spare uniform, and a few nutrient bars is the small leather-bound journal. I pick it up. It feels warm. Unnaturally warm. I open it to the last used page. I expected to see my messy shorthand, my notes on the ritual. The page is black. Not covered in ink, but charred. Burnt from the inside out. And etched into the carbonized paper, glowing with a faint, sickly witch light, are symbols I never wrote. They are shifting, moving, trying to crawl off the page and onto my skin. I didn't just witness the exorcism. I brought a piece of it home. I have to destroy it. That is the only thought in my head. It is a singular burning imperative that overrides all my training, all my fear. I cannot give it to Vance. If he sees this, he will execute me. He will say, I am corrupted. And perhaps I am. Perhaps the corruption isn't a physical rot, but this secrecy, this burden. I shove the notebook into the deep pocket of my greatcoat. I dress quickly, my fingers fumbling with the buttons. I grab my last pistol. It is a standard issue sidearm, old and heavy. I check the power pack. Full charge. I pray I won't need it. I step out into the corridor. The lights are dim. The station is sleeping, but the station is never truly silent. Servitors drone past on their cleaning cycles, their mono-task brains ignoring me. I keep my head down, walking fast. I need to get to the incineration chutes on the lower levels. The plasma furnaces there burn hot enough to melt adamantium. They can burn a book. They can burn the words. I take the service elevator down. The gears grind a sound like teeth chewing bone. I descend past the barracks, past the armory, down into the bowels of the engineering deck. The heat rises. It is a dry, industrial heat, smelling of promethium and scorched metal. It feels clean compared to the cold of G-Prime. The incineration room is empty save for a single tech adept dozing at a monitoring console. He doesn't look up as I enter. The roar of the furnaces is deafening here. I walk to chute 4. The hatch is hot to the touch. I pull the lever and the iris opens. A blast of white heat hits my face, singeing my eyebrows. I look into the heart of the fire. It is pure. It is cleansing. I pull the notebook from my pocket. It is vibrating now, buzzing like an angry hornet. I can feel the heat of it through the leather. I hold it over the chute. Castus. The voice is right behind my ear. I spin around the notebook clutched to my chest, my other hand going for my pistol. It's Vance, the interrogator. He is standing there, calm hands clasped behind his back. He's flanked by 2 stormtroopers. Their weapons are raised. They are aiming at my chest. We were wondering how long it would take, Vance says. He has to shout over the roar of the furnace, but his voice is perfectly modulated. The seed needs time to germinate. I am destroying it, I scream. It's corrupted. I am burning it. Are you? Vance takes a step forward. Or were you going to hide it? Were you going to keep it? The warp tempts us with knowledge, Acolyte. It tells us we can master it. It tells us we are special. I am loyal. I hold the book out over the fire. Look, I am throwing it in. Don't, Vance says. His voice drops an octave. It is no longer the voice of a bureaucrat. It is the voice of a predator. That book contains the resonance of a prince of the warp. It is evidence. It is a weapon. It belongs to the Ordo. It belongs to the fire, I yell. The book is burning my hand now. I can smell my own flesh cooking. Drop the gun, Castus. Hand over the book, and we will discuss your rehabilitation. I look at Vance. I look at the soldiers. I look at the fire. I remember Thrax. The weak fall first. Thrax didn't surrender. Thrax didn't negotiate. Thrax made the choice that ended him. I look at the book. The symbols are glowing bright violet. They are beautiful. They are terrible. You want it, I ask. Vance holds out his hand. Give it to me. I smile. It is the first time I have smiled in weeks. I feel the metallic taste in my mouth stronger than ever. Go get it, I say. And I let go. The book falls. It tumbles end over end, a small, dark square against the blinding white of the plasma fire. Vance lunges forward, his composure shattering. No, he screams a raw human sound. For a second, the book refuses to burn. It hangs suspended in the updraft, the leather bubbling, the pages fluttering open. I see the shadow of the demon writhe in the flames, a silhouette of smoke, trying to claw its way back up the chute. It screams a psychic shriek that shatters the lights in the incineration room and brings both stormtroopers to their knees. Then the plasma takes it. The shadow dissolves. The book disintegrates into atoms. The scream is cut off, replaced by the steady, hungry roar of the furnace. Vance stops at the edge of the chute. He stares down into the fire. His face is pale, illuminated by the dying glow of the book. He turns to me slowly. The mask of the interrogator is back in place, but it is cracked. There is fury in his eyes, and something else. Fear. Do you have any idea what you have done? He whispers. I did my duty, I say. I raise my hands. I drop my pistol. It clatters on the deck. I purge the uncleanness. Vance stares at me for a long time. He looks at the empty chute, then back at me. He motions to the stormtroopers. They stand up, shaking off the psychic shock, and advance on me. They grab my arms. Their grip is bruising. You destroyed a Class Alpha artifact, Vance says. You disobeyed a direct order from an interrogator of the Holy Ordos. I saved us, I reply. I feel light. The weight in my chest is gone. The humming in my bones has stopped. The silence in my head is beautiful. Vance walks up to me. He is close enough that I can see the pores in his skin. You saved nothing, Acolyte. You just delayed the inevitable. But you have proven one thing. He leans in and whispers in my ear. You have the will to make the hard choice. Thrax was right about you. He pulls back and nods to the guards. Take him to the cells. Not the holding cells. The training cells. He is done being a scribe. As they drag me away, I look back at the fire. The ozone smell is gone. The metallic taste is gone. All that is left is the smell of ash and the heat of the future. I am not afraid anymore. I know what is out there in the dark, and I know that fire is the only language it understands. The war continues, and now I am finally ready to fight it. The red light on the Vox recorder is blinking. It is a slow, dying pulse, like the heartbeat of a wounded animal. The battery is almost drained. I have been talking for hours, pouring the poison out of my soul and into this machine. The cell is quiet now. The training masters have left me alone for the night. They say silence is part of the curriculum. They say that in the silence you hear the Emperor. But I know what you really hear. You hear the echoes of the things you have seen. You hear the scratching in the walls. I look at my hands. They are wrapped in bandages raw from the conditioning drills. They don't look like the hands of a scribe anymore. The ink stains are gone, replaced by bruises and burns. I miss the ink. I miss the smell of dust and old paper. It was a suffocating life, yes, but it was mine. Now I belong to the Ordo. I am a weapon being forged on an anvil of trauma. They will hammer me until I am hard enough to break bone or until I shatter. Why did I record this? Why did I risk the ire of the interrogators to tell a story that no one should hear? Perhaps it is because I know that soon the man named Castus will be gone. He will be replaced by a nameless acolyte, a hunter of shadows who does not flinch, who does not fear, who does not remember his mother's voice. I needed to capture him. I needed to preserve the fear, because the fear was the only thing that proved I was human. I am going to leave this recorder in the wall cache behind the loose rivet. Maybe another recruit will find it. Maybe you are that recruit. If you are listening to this, know this. The books lie. The prayers are just words until you fill them with will. And the cold never truly leaves you. You just learn to burn hot enough to keep it at bay. The door to my cell is unlocking. The heavy gears are grinding open. It is not the Masters. It is too early. It is Vance. I can smell the gun oil. He knows. He always knows. But I am not afraid. I have said my piece. I have confessed my sins. The rest is just duty. I am reaching out to the console. My finger hovers over the termination switch. The red light blinks one last time. The floor is cold. I am ready. End recording.